Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're dissecting the single largest barrier to human achievement, the activation energy crisis. Think about the task that's haunting you right now. Maybe it's an intimidating report, starting your workout routine, or finally cleaning out that digital clutter folder. You know you should do it. You know you want the outcome. Yet you are paralyzed, trapped in the gravitational pull of inertia. This isn't laziness. This is a failure of initiation. We often mistake procrastination for a moral failing or a lack of discipline, but scientifically it's far simpler. It's a measurable resistance, a psychological payload that requires far too much emotional fuel to lift off the ground. The initial friction is often 80% of the entire task difficulty. We expend more mental energy agonizing over the start than we would actually performing the first 25% of the work. The problem is structural, not characterological. We are hardwired to conserve resources, and when the brain perceives an activity as high effort with a distant reward, it slams on the brakes. We need to trick this ancient survival mechanism. We need a low-friction ignition system that bypasses the mental gatekeeper. If you look at high performers, they aren't necessarily more motivated than you. They are just masters of lowering the barrier to entry. They respect the friction. They understand that the monumental effort needed to go from absolute 0 to 1 is disproportionately large. They don't wait for the mythical bolt of inspiration. They initiate action through minimal, viable commitment. Throughout this discussion, keep that one daunting task in mind, because by the end, we will have installed the operating system upgrade you need, the 15-minute microburn. This isn't just about starting, it's about starting with a guaranteed exit ramp, which paradoxically ensures you'll keep going. It's the ultimate psychological jujitsu against avoidance. We must accept that the first moment is the hardest. The hardest part of running is tying your shoes. The hardest part of writing is opening the blank document. We need a mechanism so simple, so minimally threatening, that your internal resistance generator doesn't even have time to spool up its defenses. We are going to isolate the initiation resistance, neutralize it with 15 minutes of focused effort, and then exploit the natural human tendency towards completion. Stay sharp, because this is going to fundamentally change how you approach everything you've been avoiding. The third element of the problem is the cognitive load, the sheer weight of perceived duration. Why do huge tasks feel physically heavy? Because your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning and executing complex tasks, has to run a massive simulation of the entire project, calculate all potential failure points, and estimate the energy expenditure before you even move a muscle. This phenomenon is called initiation resistance. When a task is overwhelming, say, write my 50,000-word dissertation, the brain throws up an immediate error message: system overload. It refuses to process the request because the perceived mental cost is too high. This isn't laziness, it's a computational overflow. Your mind is trying to protect you from burning out resources on a potentially failure-prone, long-duration activity. The brilliance of the 15-minute microburn is that it radically reduces the cognitive load by compressing the commitment horizon. We are not asking the brain to simulate 50,000 words or 50 hours. We are asking it to simulate 900 seconds, a mere 900 seconds. This is a computation your brain can handle instantly and without stress. It flips the script from, how do I start this giant project, to, what is the absolute minimum I must achieve in the next quarter hour? By making the task highly granular and ultra-short, we strip away the intimidation factor. We are exploiting a fundamental cognitive bias. Humans are terrible at long-term energy estimation, but excellent at short-term sprint assessment. Furthermore, this intense brief commitment allows for the utilization of flow state triggers without the pressure of sustained performance. Because you know you only have 15 minutes, you are forced into immediate, laser-like focus. There's no time to drift, check notifications, or context switch. The constraint, the 15-minute timer, becomes an accelerator. This intense pressure cooker environment forces efficiency. Contrast this with setting aside 3 hours for a task. The brain knows it has huge reserves of time, leading to gradual decay of focus and the inevitable introduction of distractions. The microburn leverages the urgency of the constraint to defeat the cognitive paralysis of the large task. We are redefining the scope of the mission from completion to initial velocity. And in physics, initial velocity is everything. Once the object is moving, far less energy is required to keep it in motion. We are using the 15 minutes not to achieve a major deliverable, but purely to defeat the static friction that holds us back. It's a psychological ramming speed designed to smash through the initiation barrier. The final nail in the problem coffin is the self-imposed prison of perfectionism. Often, the reason we don't start is because we haven't yet guaranteed a perfect outcome. We wait until the idea is fully formed, the environment is immaculate, or the methodology is flawless. This isn't a desire for quality, it's fear masquerading as high standards. Perfectionism is merely procrastination dressed in a sophisticated costume. If we define the start of a project as the moment we must produce excellent, publishable, or final draft material, the pressure becomes unbearable, leading to initiation avoidance. The 15-minute microburn is the antidote because its primary goal is not quality, its primary goal is motion. When you commit for just 15 minutes, you give yourself explicit permission to be terrible. You are allowed to write gibberish, produce sloppy code, or execute an ugly first draft. The psychological relief this grants is immense. We separate the roles of the creator and the editor. The creator's job is to generate raw material, and the editor's job comes later. Procrastinators try to make the creator wear the editor's hat simultaneously, grinding the process to a halt. When you start the 15-minute timer, your internal mandate must be quantity over quality, input over polish. This temporary suspension of critical judgment liberates the creative engine. Furthermore, perfectionism often involves extensive upfront planning, endless organization, setting up elaborate folder structures, or designing the perfect color-coded spreadsheet. While preparation is useful, when it becomes a stall tactic, it's destructive. The microburn requires minimal setup, just the task and the timer. It forces you to leapfrog the endless planning phase and get straight to the execution. We are focusing on what Cal Newport calls deep work, meaning highly focused effort applied to a difficult task, free from distraction. The inherent time constraint of 15 minutes naturally enforces deep work principles. Because you know the window is brief, you commit fully. If you only had 15 minutes to save a critical file before your computer crashed, you wouldn't check social media. You would focus completely. The microburn simulates that critical urgency. We are utilizing time scarcity as a psychological tool to defeat the illusion of abundant time fostered by perfectionist delay. Remember this core principle: a mediocre start always beats a perfect delayed start. The goal of the microburn is to produce a mediocre, incomplete chunk of work. That incomplete chunk is the foundation upon which momentum is built. It's the necessary, humble, zero draft. Let's analyze the failure modes of traditional advice, specifically how the microburn differs from common productivity techniques like the Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique, in theory, is fantastic: 25 minutes of work followed by a 5-minute break. However, where does the Pomodoro often fail? It fails at the point of initiation, precisely because the 25-minute commitment is still too daunting for someone suffering from high activation energy. The person staring at a monumental task often looks at 25 minutes and thinks, that's too much effort to guarantee a successful outcome, leading to the exact procrastination loop we are trying to escape. Furthermore, the 25-minute timer lacks a crucial psychological safety valve. If you hate the task 10 minutes in, you feel pressured to complete the remaining 15 minutes to win the Pomodoro, leading to resistance, resentment, and potentially lower quality work in those last 15 minutes. The microburn solves this critical flaw by redefining the scope and adding the stop clause. We are cutting the commitment duration by 40% for 25 to 15 minutes and integrating an explicit, non-judgmental exit ramp. The 15-minute microburn is fundamentally designed to overcome initiation resistance, which is the pre-game hurdle. Once that hurdle is cleared, you can certainly shift into a Pomodoro rhythm, but the microburn acts as the necessary booster rocket. It's the psychological equivalent of a priming pump. It's important to understand that the microburn is not intended for sustained day-long effort. It is intended for the initial confrontation with the avoidance impulse. Another failure mode of general advice is the platitude, just start. While logically sound, this advice lacks an actionable structure and an end date. It provides the command without the mechanism. The microburn provides the structure: 15 minutes, distraction-free, with a clear exit route. It provides the brain with a definitive constraint, which is far more comforting than an open-ended commitment. We are essentially engaging in a negotiation with our resistant self. Just give me 15 minutes. That's all. After that, you are free to stop without guilt. This is the radical difference. Traditional methods demand sustained effort from the beginning. The microburn demands minimal, time-bound, non-consequential effort to generate the necessary kinetic energy. If you find yourself consistently failing to launch your 25-minute Pomodoro sessions, the microburn is the necessary preceding step, ensuring you bridge the gap between inertia and momentum. We are attacking the core psychological vulnerability of the procrastinator, the fear of long-term commitment. The deepest agitation comes from the internal feedback loop of shame. When we delay, we don't just fail the task, we fail ourselves. This generates potent negative emotions: guilt, frustration, and self-loathing. This is the crucial point. These negative emotions are psychologically punishing, and when the brain associates the task with self-punishment, the desire to avoid the task next time increases exponentially. The loop is self-perpetuating and corrosive. We delay the task, feel terrible about delaying, and then feel too terrible and drained to start the task, leading to more delay. It's a thermodynamic system where anxiety feeds inertia. This cycle is often complicated by the pressure to maintain a certain self-image. We want to see ourselves as disciplined, capable individuals. When procrastination proves otherwise, the cognitive dissonance is painful. To escape this pain, we engage in elaborate displacement activities: binge-watching, excessive cleaning, or researching irrelevant details, anything to affirm competency while avoiding the actual difficult work. These displacement activities provide temporary relief, but ultimately amplify the shame when we realize the core task remains untouched. The microburn is designed to break this shame cycle instantly by guaranteeing a small, meaningful victory. The very act of successfully engaging in a focused 15-minute session provides an immediate positive reward signal to the brain. It says, I set a goal and I achieved it. Even if you stop after 15 minutes, you have successfully adhered to the contract. This adherence replaces the cycle of shame with a cycle of self-efficacy and self-trust. We are trading the huge, intimidating goal that guarantees failure and guilt for the small, achievable goal that guarantees success and pride. The psychological shift is profound. By consistently delivering on the 15-minute promise, you rebuild that lost self-trust, reducing the emotional friction for all future tasks. Furthermore, the commitment to 15 minutes minimizes the time available for displacement activities. If the timer is counting down, you don't have the mental space to wander off into irrelevant tasks. The constraints focus your energy and prevent the insidious time wasting that characterizes the agitation phase. We are not just trying to start the task, we are trying to repair the emotional damage caused by years of avoidance, and that repair starts with a small, guaranteed win. Now we transition decisively into the solution, the methodology and precision of the 15-minute microburn. This technique relies on 3 non-negotiable pillars: the 15-minute duration, absolute focus, and the guaranteed stop clause. First, let's address the duration. Why 15 minutes? It's the Goldilocks zone. It's significantly longer than the typical 5-minute warm-up many suggest, which often feels too brief to gain traction. But it's short enough to be minimally threatening, unlike the 30-minute or 1-hour blocks that trigger immediate resistance. 15 minutes is long enough to overcome the initial awkwardness of starting, to find your mental rhythm, and to achieve enough cognitive engagement to activate the momentum effect. In that window, you can typically produce a paragraph, sketch an outline, or sort 20 emails. This is crucial because it results in tangible, visible progress, which is the immediate source of the dopamine hit we discussed earlier. Second, absolute focus is mandatory. The 15 minutes must be a pure, deep work sprint. Phones off, notifications silenced, door closed. This isn't passive time. This is a focused attack on the problem. If you spend 15 minutes intermittently distracted, you defeat the purpose because you never achieve the necessary level of cognitive immersion required to build momentum. The constraint of time is only powerful when coupled with the constraint of attention. If you break focus, stop the timer, address the distraction, and restart the 15-minute microburn from scratch. This rigid enforcement of focus teaches your brain to respect the constraint. Third, and most revolutionary, is the guaranteed stop clause. This is the psychological safety net that makes the whole system work. You must tell yourself, genuinely and definitively, I only commit to 15 minutes. When the timer goes off, I have absolute permission to stop, guilt-free, regardless of my progress. This eliminates performance anxiety. If at 15 minutes and 1 second you still feel resistance, stop, walk away. The goal was achieved. You showed up and engaged. But here is the magic. Research shows that once kinetic energy is generated, the brain prefers completion. You will find that 90% of the time when that timer beeps, you will be in flow or close to it, and the resistance will have dissolved. You won't want to stop. The small, successful start generates a powerful pull towards finishing, far outweighing the initial effort required to start. We are using a temporary, limited commitment to trick the brain into generating unstoppable, long-term momentum. Let's walk through the detailed execution mechanics of the 15-minute microburn. This isn't just about setting a timer, it's about strategic setup and intentional execution. Step 1. Define the target of the burn. Before you start the timer, you must identify the single, small step you will commit to attacking. Not work on the report, but write the introduction's thesis statement, or process the top 10 oldest emails. Specificity defeats generality. Step 2. Initiate the isolation protocol. As we established, absolute focus is essential. This means physically moving your phone out of reach, closing all unnecessary tabs, using specific tools like Freedom or Cold Turkey if necessary, and ensuring your environment is ready for deep focus. Crucially, inform those around you that you are engaging in a 15-minute sprint and must not be interrupted. Step 3. Start the burn. Hit the timer and immediately begin the task with the mentality of quantity over quality. Write messy, code sloppily, sort imperfectly. The goal is to generate output, not finesse. If you hit a conceptual wall during the burn, don't stop. Pivot to an easier related task within the project scope, or simply free write about the problem for 2 minutes. Maintain momentum at all costs. Step 4. The assessment moment. When the timer hits 0, stop immediately. Stand up, stretch, and take a single deep breath. Now assess your state. Ask yourself honestly, do I feel enough momentum to commit to another 15 minutes, or do I genuinely want to stop? This is the decision point. If the answer is no, I still hate this, then stop, guilt-free. You have succeeded by initiating the task. The system worked. But if the answer is, I'm already here, I might as well keep going, then immediately reset the timer for another 15-minute microburn or transition into a longer Pomodoro session if you feel confident. Do not allow a break to interrupt the flow state you've achieved. This assessment and immediate recommitment is where the 90% success rate is born. It transforms the overwhelming task into a series of achievable, low-stakes sprints. This method is recursive. You keep hitting the 15-minute button until the resistance returns. When resistance is high, the timer is short. When flow is high, the timer can be longer. This dynamic adjustment based on internal resistance is the intelligent way to manage sustained effort, ensuring maximum psychological comfort while maximizing output.